Ancient Egypt, land of pyramids, golden tombs, and merciless justice. Behind the sands and sacred temples, a darker truth lay buried. A civilization ruled by divine kings who demanded absolute obedience and punished betrayal with terror. This was not just about law, it was about order, the gods, and the afterlife. From burning alive to impalement, crocodile pits to forced suicide, the punishments in ancient Egypt were brutal and deeply symbolic. This is the story the pharaohs never meant to survive. These are the darkest executions of ancient Egypt. To understand Egyptian justice, you must first understand their beliefs. Ancient Egyptians believed that every action in life affected your place in the afterlife. A cosmic balance called Ma'at governed the world. Truth, order, harmony. Crime wasn't just against society, it was against the gods. The system was harsh, but not chaotic. Egypt had judges, scribes, and even police. Punishments were written in scrolls, etched into walls, whispered in tombs. And who stood above all? The pharaoh. Not just a king, but a god on earth. When he spoke, it was divine will. Disobey him, and suffer eternal consequences. Not all crimes led to execution, but many did. Stealing from a tomb? Death. Adultery with a noble's wife? Death. Blasphemy against the gods? Death. Even lying in court could lead to execution because it corrupted Ma'at. But justice depended on your status. A commoner might be flogged or mutilated. A priest might be exiled or poisoned in secret. Sometimes trials weren't needed. If the pharaoh believed you were guilty, that was enough. Egyptians believed in symbolic punishment. The method matched the crime and echoed into eternity. Here are the most feared execution methods. Burning alive. Used rarely and only for extreme sacrilege, the flames didn't just kill the body, they destroyed the ka, or spirit, erasing your chance at afterlife. It was considered a second death. Impaling. The condemned was lifted onto a sharp stake and left to die slowly. It was public, humiliating, and symbolic, a reminder that defying Pharaoh meant agony. Crocodile feeding. In the regions near the Nile, prisoners were sometimes thrown into crocodile-infested waters. Whether myth or truth, it sent a clear message: nature itself devours traitors. Sealing in jars or tombs. Some victims were buried alive, sealed in ceramic jars, crypts, or cave cells. They would suffocate or starve, alone in darkness, as a cursed soul with no burial rites. Animal execution. In some tales, enemies were tied to desert rocks, left for scorpions, snakes, or the scorching sun. Nature became the executioner. Forced suicide. Nobles and priests were sometimes given the honorable death: a blade, a cup of poison, or a dagger in a sealed room. Refuse, and your family might suffer instead. The Harem Conspiracy, one of Egypt's darkest court dramas. Pharaoh Ramses III was the target of an assassination plot, led by one of his own wives and several officials. When the plot failed, the punishment was swift. The accused were burned alive, executed, or forced to commit suicide. Even high priests weren't spared. Scrolls show that some had their names erased from monuments, the Egyptian equivalent of eternal damnation. Tomb raiding was a serious crime, not just theft, but a sin against the dead. One infamous gang in Deir el-Medina stole treasures from royal tombs. When caught, their punishment was extreme: amputation, beatings, and in some cases, death by impalement. A high priest in Thebes defied Pharaoh's orders and rewrote religious texts. His punishment? Burial alive, his mouth sealed with wax. A message to all: defy the gods, and your voice will never reach the afterlife. Justice in Egypt was never just human, everything tied back to the gods. In death, every soul faced judgment before Osiris, god of the underworld. Your heart was weighed against a feather. Too heavy with sin? You were fed to Amit, a monstrous creature, part lion, part hippo, part crocodile. Your soul obliterated. Execution in life meant doom in the afterlife, but even the guilty feared spiritual punishment more than death. That's why many executions were ritualized, to ensure the condemned had no hope of peace beyond the grave. In Egypt, Pharaoh was the law. There were no appeals, no juries, no votes, only the will of the divine king. A pharaoh could pardon a thief or execute a noble for a single insult. Some pharaohs were merciful, others were ruthless. Akhenaten, the heretic king, executed dozens for religious defiance. Seti I punished rebels by burning entire villages. Hatshepsut, one of the few female pharaohs, allegedly buried enemies alive beneath her temple. Pharaohs ruled with majesty and fear. Ancient Egypt is remembered for its glory, the pyramids, the mummies, the gold, but beneath the beauty lay blood. Execution was never just punishment, it was a tool, a symbol, a message written in flesh, stone, and flame. Obey the pharaoh, honor the gods, or suffer not just in life, but for eternity. Here in the Gallows Archive, we dig up what was meant to stay buried. Because history isn't always about how people lived. Sometimes it's about how they died.